Hey guys, Matt here with a HUNDEGNI video analysis. Today I'm going to be going over HUNDEGNI 3.3. Now if we do look down really fast, I should point out that this was published on April 1st of 2018. And in addition to that being April Fool's Day, that was also Easter for 2018. So kind of two events lining up there. Of course, we only got one video because Manglet does not upload on April 1st, but he does upload on Easter. And so 3.3, I think I'm just going to play it all the way through, and then like usual we're going to go back and we're going to kind of look over different portions of it. And I should just say right off the bat before I do start anything at all that we have not solved anything major in this video yet. And similar to 2.9, we're just, 3.2, similar to that, we're still kind of looking through it and trying to get our bearings on it, and there's still lots of time before the next HUNDEGNI upload, so we have plenty of time to figure some new things out. So I'm going to go ahead and play this now, and then we'll talk. Alright, so that was 3.3. Now, right off the bat, I should mention this is around 28 seconds long, and 3.2 was 29 seconds long. So they have a very, very similar length and time. And as I have already uploaded on this channel, there's an overlay of 3.3 over 3.2 with the 3.2 clips in order from timestamps that were provided in the upper left corner. And there are some interesting things. So before I forget, I'm just going to go ahead and point out what some of those interesting things were right now. So if we go back to this portion in the video, this code, which we'll talk about a bit more later, one of these circles, I believe it's this one right here, this mid-sized one, when it's rising up, and you overlay it over 3.2, there's a moment where 3.2, there's a window. Now I'm going to go ahead and put a screenshot up as I talk about this. There's a window that perfectly kind of outlines, in a similar way, this orb, this circle. And so that could be a coincidence, but it seems like a pretty big one. Both these videos seem to have some sort of focus on circles, or a general curvature. So that's very interesting. But if we do go back to the beginning of this video a little bit, I'll go ahead and point out what we are seeing right now. I think this is a continuation off of 3.2, where we were in a wooded area and walking along a path, and it seems that now the narrator has stopped upon two buildings, and they are both greenhouses, which are connected, which is kind of interesting. And we'll talk a bit more about that later. And I'll go ahead and play a bit more of this just so we can get a better look at the greenhouses. Oh, and I should point out there's a building in the back here, a very large orange building, which kind of ties into our idea that this entire area is located around a school within the state of Maine, Coney High School, which also serves as a middle school. We think that this might be a portion of that school, and that we are seeing greenhouses that were built for that school, for the students, but these greenhouses since appear to be very overgrown and pretty much abandoned. We can't be sure because we can't really see inside. I've kind of tried to enhance the images, and there does seem to be materials inside, like a shelf, and the other building seems to have something indoors that it's housing, but we do not believe that these are still in use. In fact, if this was shot around the same time as 3.2, that would mean that I doubt it would still be standing here in 2018. Because if you remember, 3.2 is dealing with 2006 as a date. And so if this is taking place in 2006, I doubt something that looks this terrible would still be standing all these years later. And there is some more additional evidence that we have that Coney High School could be a pretty big suspect, but if I do go over that, I want to go over it in its own standalone video rather than taking up too much time in this video, because it is still speculation, but there is some very interesting kind of parallels that we are seeing. And a big one, I guess I should just point out, is that Coney is in front of a rather large wooded area that does have several paths which are open to both, I'm assuming, students and the public, and it has multiple different areas of water, bodies of water, and as well as even a cave system, apparently. And so if we see caves in a future HUNDEGNI video, then we can be almost certain that that is where this is being filmed. So you had to the volume pretty much way up to hear this, but there is a voice at that point which is whispering something, and there has been some debate on exactly what the voice is saying. I'm going to play it one more time just to see if we can hear that a bit better. That was the last portion of the line that he says. Well, really, we can't even tell a gender because of the whispering. It could be a female voice or it could be a male voice. But one thing we are thinking that it is saying, one option is divide, multiply, which I'll admit I hear that very distinctly, and we think that that could be a hint on how we solve the code at the end of this video. And another person ended up pointing out that it also sounds very similar to here we are, welcome to hell. We're very certain that the first two lines are repeated. If it's divide, then it is repeated, and if it is here we are, that is also repeated. So that first two lines, they are just the same line that's being said twice. And the final line is either, of course, multiply or welcome to hell. And obviously, if we do go with the second option of here we are, welcome to hell, that is kind of interesting. If this is being filmed by a student, some people have pointed out that maybe these greenhouses, these abandoned greenhouses, could be like a meeting place for students, some place for them to kind of hang out. It's hard to say for sure, and but saying welcome to hell seems like something that a teenager might do, especially if they're around the school campus. They might be considering their school or the campus itself like hell. And so there's lots of different theories about what that could mean, if that is indeed the case. And if we do look at the second greenhouse here a bit, you can see that there is stuff inside of it. So maybe they're just like housing small things inside there just so they don't get water damaged. It's pretty much impossible to say, but you can definitely tell that this is not a very well-structured building. And another thing that has been pointed out, and I don't know how much truth there could be to this, but we are thinking that perhaps this shape right here could be a face looking through the window. It had to be a pretty tall individual, almost as tall as this door, but we can't be certain that this door is a normal size because it is attached to a greenhouse and not a normal building. But there is kind of a face outline here, a similar kind of a white skin. You can see perhaps a black hairline around this region, a spot for eyes, forehead around there, and a bit darker area where the nose and mouth could be. So a face just kind of looking out into the woods behind where the narrator is filming. Now we can't be certain, but it would be interesting if that were the case, because otherwise this is just a video of someone filming rundown greenhouses, which could be a hint towards the location this was filmed. I'll give it that. But at the same time, it could also be a hint that there is another individual involved, and that is being shown by being kind of hidden. So going forward, there's that very weird noise, and we haven't talked a lot about this noise within our Discord yet. But we are kind of thinking that it kind of almost sounds like a voice. If we listen to it again, there does seem to be almost like a moaning kind of human quality to it. Especially towards that end portion. The way it kind of fades out just doesn't sound quite right. Otherwise, we can't be certain if there's supposed to be some sort of message there, or if maybe that's just there for ambiance to indicate some sort of shift of focus. All those options are very possible. So I just figured I'd point that out because that is a very interesting noise, the loudest noise within this entire video. Now here we have a close-up of this code, very bizarre code. I think some people have called it the orbit code, other people just the circle code, stuff like that. And here we get just a very close-up view of it, and I can't be certain exactly why we get this first view of it and then the second view, which comes later, because they are the same. They're not different codes, they are the same. Some people think that perhaps because it is scrolling upwards like this, that implies that if we are to figure out how to read this code, we have to start out at the very bottom and then move upwards. So this might be the first thing that we look at, this portion of the code. Circles divided into 4 quadrants. As you can see, if you look very closely, they are divided with a small white line with a center black portion. And so it might be possible that we're supposed to be moving upwards when we read it. Other people have said that it could be read clockwise, maybe even counterclockwise. And the imagery of clocks was present within the Pointing Ninja Z investigation. And so I definitely think that that could have some sort of impact on how we end up solving this code eventually. So the video then cuts to the code as a whole, and in this view we can finally see all the different colors that are present, and please note that in the background this color changes. It goes from red to yellow to green, then blue, so you have that kind of natural progression of primary colors. And we think that is very important in understanding what order to read this in. So perhaps these red quadrants are the first thing we're supposed to read, then we're supposed to move on to reading yellow, then we move on to green, and then blue is the last thing we focus on. We believe that that is definitely a big clue towards solving this code and figuring out the message that it's trying to get across. See there, you can see that kind of shift from color to color. Now, if we take a closer look at these quadrants, there are some very odd things, and I think this might be best viewed if we actually go back to this close-up version. You can see that most of these portions have a middle black point, which is just on its own and normal looking. However, there are some black portions that have a strange kind of arrow or point, which kind of moves outwards, and it always seems to point towards a quadrant which sits on top of a gray quadrant, as you can see here with yellow sitting on top of the gray there. And actually, if we go back a bit more, we can see another quadrant which does the exact same thing. There it is. It's very small though, but once again you see a point, it's pointing out. We have a gray quadrant and another yellow quadrant sitting on top of that. So yellow might have some sort of specific purpose, which can both, like, it can be the quadrant itself, as you can see here, or it can be on top of a quadrant. Very interesting and very strange. Also around this middle section, I just thought I'd point this out, but there does seem to be like a mirroring happening right around here. There's red on this small portion, which is to the left bottom, and right here we have another red point, which is on the bottom right. Right over here we have red in the lower right, red in the lower left, blue in the lower right, and blue in the lower left. So it kind of does seem mirrored in that sense, and that could be on purpose, or that might just be a coincidence and how the code is just naturally created. Very difficult to say because this code is just so alien and strange looking in general. Now, one thing that we are thinking at the moment is that gray portions might not be representing a letter at all. They might just be like the progression in how you move from one alphabetic letter to the next. And it's only the colored portions which actually represent a letter. If that is the case, then we're looking at a relatively short code, but one that is still there and still quite notable. I think, if I remember correctly, that's around 23 letters or so. We've also tried mirroring this code on both the horizontal and vertical axis. Obviously, that's not really giving us much of anything. We've also tried filling in these circles with more stacks, because we consider these stacks if it moves upwards. And we've also thought, well, there's this one lone portion here. Maybe that's the beginning of a new stack, which is supposed to carry out towards the right, and another stack could potentially carry out towards the bottom portion or the center portion. Another one could move to the left, and the same could be said for all these other portions of the code. We could have a stack in each of them. We've kind of filled that in, and we end up with a very strange, like trippy shape, which is very interesting to look at. And we cannot be certain if that is what this code looks like in a full form, or if perhaps this is a full form of the code. And if it needed any more letters, then you'd just see more of the gray quadrants highlighted. Once again, I can't stress this enough that we just are not sure at the moment because we really don't know how to read this or how to begin to read it. We are indeed thinking that this is not a code that already exists in the world, but rather one that Mangled created all on his own. And so that gives leeway to just so many different possibilities. And there is, of course, always the chance that this is a code that is already established, but it's just very obscure. And if that is the case, we've yet to find one which really looks very similar to this or operates in a similar way. But we've looked at this in different mathematical senses, and we've tried to rotate things around, looking at different ways in that. We've tried overlays, lots of different things, and right now it's just very difficult to know for sure. One interesting concept that I think I should bring up is the possibility that this is some sort of cipher wheel, and that if you were to place the letters of the alphabet like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, all around, these colored portions would end up indicating what letter you choose, the letter that falls within that. And I think an important thing about Mangled in general is that he does not seem to reuse codes. Once he uses a code for the first time, he kind of tries to do something new each time. And one thing that we have not seen in any of these videos yet is a cipher wheel. And so since this is shaped like a wheel, this could be some sort of like grand cipher, a cipher made of different ciphers. A very interesting and bizarre concept, which I could definitely see being the case. I should also point out the relative perfection in which this was created. Each circle is half the size of the circle which came before it. So this large central circle is the biggest, and the second largest ones are half the size of the first. This is half the size of the second, half the size of that, and so on. So you kind of get the idea. And these were very perfectly carried out, which makes us wonder if this was created within like an online software, which kind of you type in a message and then it automatically creates something like this. Because it just seems so perfect that I don't see it being made by hand. It seems like that would be very time consuming and difficult. And very pixel perfect. But as we've seen so far, it seems like this was created in a pretty perfect sense, without any notable imperfections. So that's a very interesting thing that I figured I'd point out, because that might indicate that geometry is very important here, and that even if one quadrant was just slightly skewed or not quite where it's supposed to be, that would kind of mess up how we perceive everything. And with all these being circles and with these central points and everything, it does seem like geometry could have a very, very important role in determining exactly how we're supposed to solve this thing. As for how this code might relate to the video that we're seeing at the beginning here, I'm not sure that they do. I think that maybe two things are going on here. The narrator is Mangled is trying to get across two storylines, one that's involving the real world and some sort of event that's going to be shown through actual video, realistic video. And then there's going to be a second part, which is just very code-oriented, something perhaps newer that's not directly involved with this older material. I think that might be what's going on. One thing that I do think is important to point out as well is that this video ends with a white blank screen. And that could just be to pad out the length of the video, that way it can be around the same length as 3.2, which would imply that an overlay is indeed important. However, I don't see why he couldn't have just lingered longer on shots like this, which would have perfectly extended the length of the video without the need for a white portion at the end. So it is a bizarre choice to, in that sense, make the video longer through essentially nothing, because we've looked at this white space and we've tried to see if there's something hidden in it. We've put different overlays and we haven't found anything. It does seem to be just a pure white screen for some reason. And so with all that being said, I believe that is everything involved with 3.3 that we know of right now. I think that we understand 3.2 a lot better than this one. However, both are still unsolved as of the moment. And any updates or anything that I forgot, I will be putting in the description below, as well as the link to our Discord chat. Speaking of the Discord chat, I would like to thank them because half this information I've talked about, half of the things that we've noticed throughout this code and tried, I haven't even been involved with. It's just other people doing a lot of different idea making and a lot of different techniques and trying to solve very different portions of this video. And I think with more continued effort, we will eventually come to a breakthrough. But as of the moment, this is still very mysterious, and we'll have to see where it goes. And I'm very interested to see what that ends up looking like when it's all said and done. So for now, that is everything with this video, and we'll have to wait a while for a 3.4 because I don't believe that's coming out until pretty much almost near the end of the year. And that's just one of the frustrating things about ManGled. It's just the long wait times. But once again, it gives us lots of time to look over this and try to come to conclusions about what exactly it's trying to say and how exactly we are to read it and figure out what the message is. So until that next upload, or until we have some sort of other breakthrough that I think is worth making a video about, that is all for now, and Matt out.